Burnout is a real thing. You have your family to balance, take care of. You're responsible for them. You then have your work, your full-time job, your employment, or if you're a student, you're going to school. How do you blend and balance all these things together? It's not easy, but here's the thing. If you prioritize and focus on what's important in this season, it may help. Let's say you know your daughter's birthday is coming up. It's important that you attend your daughter's birthday. So you may have to let people at work or at school or whatever things you're doing know, hey, listen, I can't be here for you for this amount of time. My daughter's birthday is important. Or let's say your daughter's having a birthday and there's a really important work engagement you need to attend to. And hopefully that's rarely. You may have to sit down with your daughter and tell her, hey, sweetheart, or your son or your wife or your husband and say, listen, I'm going to have to be away at work. I hope you understand. And here's what I think. I think most people, especially adults, they'll understand that you have these ebbs and flows of life and you have to prioritize, because I'm telling you, if you don't balance the ebbs and flows of life, you'll find that your life is going to be unfulfilled. This is really important. And you want to work at a company, you want to work with other people, you want to work with a boss who understands that. And hopefully you have a family, you have friends who understand that as well. One time I had a friend of mine, he was teaching Sunday school, ministering in our church. He was going to finish his MBA. He had a full-time job. He had a business that he was running. And I said, dude, my friend, this is the season you're in right now. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about us going to dinner. Don't worry about us hanging out. This is your season of being busy. So if you have people like that who can be around you and support you and help you rise to the occasion when needed, you experience less burnout. I was talking to an event planner some time ago, and she shared with me a few tips and things that will help you as professional speakers, but not just professional speakers, even help you with sales as well. And I'm not going to list each one now because you're going to hear me list them in the expert panel discussion we're having shortly. But here's the bottom line. And you're going to hear Robert talk about this and say one key word. If you want to succeed in business, whether you're a professional speaker as I am or otherwise, and you want to succeed in anything that you do, always remember it's the human relationship that matters most. This is what I never, ever want you to forget. Oftentimes, the reason why there's conflict, the reason why there's issues, the reason why there's some angst, some friction going on in our life is because we forget the human connection. Because we're not doing that friend-to-friend connectivity. Because we're not thinking of the other person. We're thinking only of ourselves. And this often is what happens. People oftentimes just want to feel heard. People oftentimes just want to feel understood. And the more you're able to do that in the relationships in your world, the better things will be. I had the amazing pleasure and experience to teach Sunday school class with a young man who was autistic. Now, there's millions of people who are autistic, and for some of you, like, Ramon, where are you going with this? What is this about? Well, I had never spent that much time that I know of with somebody who was on the autism spectrum. And it was a great experience. Now, I had interacted with this young man before in church and other places, and, averted his eyes a bit and things of this nature. Is just common, I believe, as I understand, with those who are on the spectrum of some degree. But my point is, it got me thinking why some of the smartest people in the world are autistic. This young man was wrapping circles around me in class. How fast he was turning scriptures, how fast he was responding, how the concept he grasped and the way he grasped it. And it got me thinking of what a joy it is. And sometimes we assume things in others. You hear Robert Kennedy talk about this soon in the expert panel. Sometimes we put labels on people. Sometimes we go in things, assuming things. But you know what? What makes the world go around, as I just mentioned, it dovetails with this as well. It's just treating people like you want to be treated. Just treating people as human. That's what the thing is. So listen, we're going to jump into our expert panel right now to dive into all these things and more. And don't forget, I want you to reach out to me. DM me on Instagram, Ramon at Smart Hustle, Ramon Ray Smart Hustle rather on Instagram. You can check me out at RamonRay.com. See my new venture, ZoneOfGenius.com. But let me know you're listening and watching this on the Rundown with Ramon. Let's check out our expert panel. And And now my favorite part of the show. And again, everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here at the Rundown with Ramon. If you weren't here listening, there really would be no Rundown with Ramon. So again, glad you're here. And don't forget to DM me on Instagram, Ramon Ray Smart Hustle, however else you find me. But let's jump into it. Our expert panel, my good friends, Larisa Harrington. Why I'm saying it like I'm Spanish, I don't know. But Larisa Harrington and Robert Kennedy III. Larisa, how are you? How's your family? How's your world doing today?
I am wonderful. And I love how you say my name, Ramon. And I always have so much fun hanging out and talking with y'all. So I'm honored to be here and share space with you. Thanks.
Indeed, I do as well. Good to have you here. Robert, how are you, my friend? What's going on, man?
I was just about to say, I better get a Roberto with that, my friend. Yes, I'm fantastic. I'm fantastic. Winding down my week, just came off a little bit of travel and just looking forward to what's next for this fourth quarter of 2022. So let's rock.
I am as well. It's amazing how fast time goes. Talking about how fast time goes, let's jump into it. Larisa, I'd love for you to help kick us off the discussion. I know we've talked in the past, and I think this is a topic, Larisa and Robert, that will never, ever tire because we're humans and we have time around us and we, love our works, love our jobs. Some of us do, or we have to do them either way. And we have family. We got kids and hubbies and spouses and boyfriends and girlfriends and dogs and cats and all the things that we do in life, Larisa. So I think this aspect of burnout, tiredness, not sure where to put your priorities can be a challenge. But Larisa, can you mind just open us up a bit and talk about that? You had some conversations over the last period of time. I'd love to hear what you've learned. And of course, as always, tips that we can learn in the Rundown with Ramon on this aspect of work, burnout, family, and more. Larisa, let me give it to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ramon. So when we think about burnout, oftentimes people are just using that like, oh, I'm so burnt out. But in reality, they're still doing the work. They're just exhausted. When we think about burnout, it's that point where they are completely exhausted mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and not able to do the work that they love doing anymore. And so when I work with people, it's really around the prevention of that. So we're starting to notice things sooner so we don't get to that end stage of burnout. But I was talking with someone this morning, actually, and this person is most of my clients. They're high performing, high achieving people who really care about doing good in the world and sometimes neglect their health and their relationships. And so this person was sharing that they were working really hard and then they got to this place where they were burnt out. They couldn't do anything anymore. So they stopped doing the intake piece of the work they were doing. And then they started taking care of themselves better. And now they're at the place where they need to kick it back up again. And so we were talking about this cycle that I see so often where people are going full force with their business, not taking care of their health, not cultivating their relationships. And then they burn out or they realize, hey, my spouse is about to leave me because I've been neglecting them, or I ended up in the hospital because I haven't been taking care of myself. But then they drop the work piece. And then they're like, okay, I'm just going to go all in and, spend every moment with my spouse, or I'm going to go all in on my health and spend hours a day doing all of this stuff. But then they drop the work piece that is also important. And so when I work with people, when I want to share as this tip, it's about holding on to all of those pieces. That if those, for the people I work with, those are the three things that are important, not talking about faith and finances and all those other things, because they're all connected with those. But being able to feel satisfied and fulfilled in the work that you're doing, also like feeling good in your own body and in your own life, and making sure that you are cultivating those meaningful relationships. And so it's about holding on to what's working and then adding in the other piece. And so what happens when they kind of this ping pong back and forth of like, okay, all in on my business. Okay, I'm burnt out there. Now I'm going to go all in on this other thing and drop the stuff that's working. And so just as a tip, if anyone out there listening is feeling that same thing, first off, pay attention before you get to that place of complete burnout, but really focus on how you can hold on to what's working and then also focus on the other areas. So if you are recognizing, hey, I'm spending a little bit too much time at work, or my spouse is telling me they feel neglected, let me see what I need to hold on to there so that I can still remain feeling satisfied and fulfilled. What stuff do I need to delegate? What stuff do I just need to take off my plate? But how can I make sure that I hold on to the things that are actually important? And make sure that I'm spending quality time with my spouse, and make sure that I'm getting enough sleep and eating nourishing foods and moving my body in a way that I need. And so that comes back to, a lot of the work I do with clients, it's coming from this foundation of mindfulness. Like, we have to be able to pay attention before we end up in the hospital, before we get served divorce papers, before we lose our business. So paying attention earlier on, holding on to what works, and saying, how can I make sure that I am taking care of myself in all of the areas that are important?
Larisa, I love that. And Robert, before you jump in, I just have one thing. Our mutual friend, Scott Simons, Robert, you may have heard us mention the name, but he's a mutual friend of me and Larissa's on platforms and a speaker. And he's been very public with it. So I'm just saying it now. He talked about Larisa. He was at a time in his life and he ended up on a gurney and the stretcher, ambulance came and all these kind of things. He had issues in his relationships as well, and some shaming and things he felt in his body, and he had to align himself. So that's what I'm hearing you say. Eventually he had to get it right. What do you think happened with him? And we don't have to use him directly, but meaning somebody who said, I was messed up, and now we see this transformation. Just maybe talk about, what do you go through when you work with people, Larisa? I'm curious, how does one like a Scott Simons or whatever not end up gone, departed from us, but he was able to, I guess, stop that and maybe do some of the things you said. Pay attention. Hold on. I was writing notes, and now he says, I spend quality time. He talks about it, with his Southern accent. It's Friday. I'm going to spend time with my son. See y'all later. We're going to the football game. So just highlight that again, Larisa. Then Robert, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. And I hadn't heard Scott talk about that, so I'm not sure
Very
the
openly.
specifics of like what happened there, but oftentimes it is, things get really bad before people get that.
I'll just tell you, high blood pressure he talked about, and issues in his marriage. He said it very openly. He said, I had high blood pressure. He was at work and they said his face was red. That was the situation. And he had either heart issues or things like this. And he said, I had to stop. And now he focuses on health, family, and his business. So continue on, please. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why, like, I try talking about this so much, is to help people have that awareness before they get to that point.
Yeah.
Right. And so, for starting off with your gratitude and your goals and all of those things, I think it's having time on your calendar, or whatever you want to call it, having allotted time for that clarity and for the self-reflection. Because when you're going so fast all the time and taking care of other people all the time, and you're just kind of ignoring what's happening with you, it's real easy to overlook those, what I talk about, like the whispers, right? You're overlooking all of the whispers and you're waiting until you hear the screams.
Right.
Like, we need to be able to pay attention to those things of like, oh, okay, you're talking about high blood pressure. Like, what are those things that I'm noticing in my body now before I end up in the hospital, before I end up with a heart attack? How can I pay attention to those things? And my body is saying like, hey, you're pushing a little too hard. Hey, maybe you're drinking a little too much caffeine and you actually just need more sleep. Hey, let me pay attention to like the body language that my spouse is giving me, so I don't have to wait until she's screaming at me, telling me she wants to leave. Yeah, and absolutely. So it's the paying attention piece and putting it on your calendar, because when you have a lot going on, it's easy to just be like, oh, okay, I'll deal with that later. And then you don't realize that later never comes. Like, make it a priority intentionally, preventatively, putting it on your calendar so that you're taking time for that reflection, so you can actually say, this is what I need today. Maybe I need to shift my calendar a bit because this is more important right now.
No, that is so true, Larisa. Robert, jump into this conversation. Do you identify what Larissa's talking about? People you've worked with, please feel free to take the mic and share with us from your perspective what you heard from Robert Kennedy III.
Well, I think the thing that stands out for me is when Larisa just mentioned the whispers, recognizing the whispers before they turn into screams. And a lot of us are guilty of that because we don't have, or we haven't developed our own intentional, maybe tangible joy meter, right? So you go to the doctor and the doctor straps this thing on your arm and they say, hey, this is what your blood pressure is. We've got these numbers. So you see this number, you're like, oh my gosh, if it gets up to 180 over like 150, I need to watch that. Right. We go to some other doctor, or we go to the banker, and the banker points out specifically, OK, if your bank account is here, your bank account is not healthy. Right. So, but we don't have those types of things that we've crafted for ourselves. So she talks about, or Larisa just talked about, are you involving, or are you being intentional about gratitudes? Are you being intentional about activities with your spouse and putting it on your calendar. And because we're not being intentional about it, we just kind of have this willy-nilly thing. So I think one of the things that some people can start with is literally putting a number, assigning a number to some specific things. Okay, yep, I'm going to be grateful for 5 things this morning, and I'm going to say it out of my mouth every single morning. Yes, I will spend 30 minutes with my spouse today having non-confrontational conversation. Right? Yep. So, and that's when I talk about joy meter, look back at what you're doing. How much joy, if I were to score myself each day, how much joy did I get from what I did yesterday? On a scale of 1 to 10, was it a 5? Was it an 8? Was it a 9? And if you find yourself saying 5 too often or in too many days in a row, then okay, yeah, I got to do something. I got to look at that. So I want to suggest or encourage people to be even more intentional about the measurement of your joy.
You know, Robert, I wonder if there's a therapist, if there's a coach who helps purpose-driven leaders who should have some sort of an app or tool, like free, but then have an upgrade to like $199, a joy meter or something. Hi, I'm Larisa Harrington, and you can download my joy meter. What do you think, Robert? Don't you feel
Dude,
that?
I don't know if that sounded like professional, what you said.
I was just trying to mimic Larissa's voice.
Sounded a little bit sketchy.
Beyond that, Robert, roll
Yes.
with me here, and please, can you save me from that then? And what do you think about my idea, Robert?
Well, I would have put the voice a little bit higher, so it's not as sultry.
You do it, Robert.
Listen, let's download the joy meter for happiness today. Come on, let's go with that.
You like that? Okay.
You were like real sultry, bro.
Larisa, what do you think about all that now?
I mean, maybe I would get more downloads if I talk like, I don't know.
Would it be the wrong fit customer, right? The wrong fit customer. So, but no, consider that. But no, Robert, I think you're right. We do, you know, I get my tires changed every X thousands of miles. I get my oil changed. There's a little sticker right on my car. And to your point, Larissa and Robert, there's nothing like that, as it were, except for, you know, our faith or things that we may do. This is your practice, right, Larissa? This is what you do. But there's nothing like that naturally, as it were. Just we don't have it. There's no little check I can do. Even a watch doesn't have it. So, but seriously speaking, everyone listening, this is the work Larissa does. So things like this, I would definitely say, if you're feeling this way, or as you say, Larissa, I think let's underline that again. You were saying, let's not wait until we crash. Let's not wait until you have to have it. There's practices I'm guessing people can do before they get there to monitor and do check-ins with themselves. Was I hearing a thread through there, Larissa? Is that something like that?
Yeah, definitely. And I do have a free course that's included. It's that self-assessment of where are you? Where is your satisfaction and fulfillment in the different areas of your life? Because I love what Robert was talking about with being intentional and making time for that self-assessment. And so if anybody wants access to that, you can email me, Larissa at strongbynaturewellness.com. We're on all the social platforms, Strong by Nature Wellness. But that is I have that assessment because we need to be able to see where we are. And when, right, the people I work with, they really care about making a difference in the world. They care about other people. And oftentimes they're not taking as good a care of themselves as they are other people. And they're not even paying attention to what they need, right? It's not an intentional thing of like, oh, I'm just going to neglect myself and do all this stuff for other people. It's that they're not even recognizing like when they're suffering. Yeah. Because they're just so focused on what's going on around them and making a positive impact in the world. So yes, doing those assessments, you can reach out to me and I have a free course for that, but also doing those self check-ins with yourself to say, I do need to shift these things. I have my calendars set I have a lot of stuff like blocked off on my calendar, but also it's being able to check in and say right now, even though this was on my calendar, I need to do this thing. We have to have that, for me, I believe, that structure and the flexibility to say, oh, you know what? My child needs me right now. So I'm going to have to reschedule this meeting. Or just before this, I went to take my dog for a walk because that's what I needed to do. And even though that wasn't on my calendar, right? It's being able to check in to see when you need to pivot.
Yeah. No, and I think, Larissa, and I love to know what you think about this, Robert, that people around you who don't understand that, I would think they have the problem. This is not directly what you were saying, but there was one executive and she was saying she was going through some medical issues or something, and a famous person, Stitch Fix or something, I don't know what the company was, but somebody like that. And she said, I stopped and I had to have a meeting with my team and say, listen, I'm going through this medical issue. Here's what's going on in my life. So they don't understand. So my point, Larissa, I think, is that if you're around people who you're like, hey, God, you see it's a meeting that you can deprioritize in a good way. I want to take my dog for a walk. I need to think a bit, or I need to take my wife out or my husband out or my kids out. And they're like, ooh, Larissa, that also shows then the people you're around may not be the right people who you want to roll with for long term. Does it make sense, Larissa? And then Robert, what do you think?
And I actually love that example, Ramon, because I think I work with organizations as well, not just individuals. And it's seeing that modeled from the top. Like seeing that authenticity and the vulnerability to say, hey, this is what's going on with me and this is what I need, and having those open conversations. And how important is that when we're thinking about the impact that we want to make in the organization and the culture of the organization? That's a big piece of it, right? Because you can sit at work all day and pretend you're working, but be thinking about all the things going wrong in your life and not be very efficient or effective.
That's right.
Or you could work for an hour and be like, okay, I'm going to take a 30-minute break because I need that, and come back like full speed and get more stuff done. It's not about how many hours you're working. And so I think what you're talking about is really important to say, hey, this is what's going on with me and this is what I need, and make sure we're all on the same page.
Absolutely. Robert, what do you think about that?
Listen, I really believe that what you said earlier about your circle and the people that you're around being crucial to your mental health, your capacity, and the awareness that Larissa has been talking about. Because if I have to filter my own stuff through my own brain all the time, I'm gonna rationalize. I may lie to myself. I may make up some stories about what is actually happening. But if I've got people, if I've got a circle, if I've got resources that will say, hey, man, you seem a little bit off. Or have you considered blah, blah, blah? What's going on in your world? You're normally this way. This is how you normally show up. Today you showed up like this, right? That's critical. That's important to really avail yourself of resources and friends and circles like that.
Absolutely. Robert, what do you say to people, though, who may say, I don't have that support group, or I don't know where they are, I'm not around them, I didn't grow up that way, my family's not this way, or in my business, I go to a gleaming office tower for 10 hours a day and they're all totally nasty people. What do you say to people? And again, each scenario is different, I'm sure, but arguably speaking, people who are, they don't have a Larissa and Ramon around them, Robert, like you do. Every single week we hang out they don't have us. What do you do, Robert?
The hard answer is go find them.
Yeah,
that's it. I can sit in my living room and whine and say, oh my gosh, nobody loves me. And I don't mean to be dismissive. I think the way that I said it just now may have minimized some of the challenges that people have. There are some people who find it very difficult to get up out of their space because of whatever pressures life has put on them to go and find. The only answer, though, is getting up and going to find, because not many of us are lucky enough, I'll use that word, or blessed enough to have circles or resources or people always chasing after, like the shepherd to the sheep, right? Finding you to make sure that you're okay. So and I think what Larissa said about whispers and screams, if we have a process beforehand while we're at whispers, if we take it up on ourselves to figure out what and who our resources can be before we need them, then when we do need them, it becomes a little bit easier to move in that direction.
Yeah, and I promise Rundown with Ramon audience, but by the way, let me just say, so glad you're here with us, and I hope you're enjoying this discussion. Usually we have some bullet points, but I think this is so good, and I have a feeling, hold on one second, let me just, I can hear the Rundown with Ramon audience saying, oh, Ramon, we're loving this. Is great. Yeah. So sometimes we stick to what we know the audience likes. But I want to say that our mutual friend also, I know Larissa knows her, Amelia Antonetti, she was saying just today in a group or in a live podcast or in a social audio app that the hardest part sometimes is just starting. So to your point, Robert, with all the things we're doing, all the excuses we can make, many very valid in honoring everybody's different, right? I happen to be a person, I don't get embarrassed easily. I can go do anything. Half the world may be totally different than that. But we got to start. We have to take some step, call somebody like a Larisa or whatever you need to do. But I think that's right. Larisa, let me let you have the last word before I think we may move on here, but we'll see what happens. But let me let you have the last word. Any more thoughts you have on this? This has been very good.
Yeah, I am. I'm loving this conversation. And just to kind of touch back to what Robert was just talking about and what you were saying from Amelia of just starting, I also want to add in this piece about worthiness, because there's a lot of people who are attracting toxic people, who are attracting that crowd. We were talking about the circle, because they don't really believe that they are worthy of anything more than that. And so I think that that's just such an important piece. And right, I believe that you are all worthy of unconditional love and respect and support. But just notice if that's what's coming up for you. If you've been feeling that way, where you're looking at your circle, you're looking at your life, and you're like, but this isn't the life that I dreamed of. Start with that piece. Like, know that you are worthy of more than that, and that you are worthy of being in beautiful circles like we have here, where you are treated with respect, where you are seen and heard and validated. And so I just wanted to add that piece there, because I know that when I work with clients, that's one of the number one things that is at the root of why they're stuck in that place, is their own worthiness and trying to do so much for others and not recognizing that their needs matter too.
I love it. That was powerful. Powerful, powerful. Love it. Let's shift gears a bit. And again, Robert, please take a minute or two and let people know who you serve, who you want to talk to, and where people can find you, Robert, please. And Lewis will ask you to do that again too. But Robert, please.
Fantastic. I'm Robert Kennedy III, RK3. That's me. And I help real estate agents, real estate associations, real estate brokers, people in the real estate space who need to share messages with their prospects, suspects, clients, and customers. Help them to share messages that ultimately move people to action. So you can find me on the webs, the interwebs, at RK3. That's me. You'll find all my socials there. Fantastic resources to help you become a fantastic communicator and storyteller. So RK3, that's .me.
I love it. You can find, even on the Fax Machine, Prodigy, AOL, CompuServe, any one of those platforms. You just look up Robert and he'll be there. You just find him. Larisa Harrington, please tell us one more time your website, please.
Oh, what is my website? Strongbynaturewellness.com is the website, and Strong by Nature Wellness on all the social platforms. And I work with purpose-driven professionals and organizations who really care about making a positive impact in the world. And I help them be successful in their business, their health, and their relationships, so they can make an even bigger impact without burning out.
I love it. And I do encourage Rundown with Ramon audience, listen, you're hearing the sound of the voice. You've been with us for a few weeks now, hearing this episode. And so definitely reach out to Larisa and Robert, the good people, and if they can help you in some way, life or business. Robert, I was talking to an event planner, event manager a few weeks ago, and she was considering having me. She had mentioned your name, but she didn't want you. She said she wanted me. Robert, she was asking me about speaking at an event. And we started talking to conversation beyond just, having me at the event. And three things she mentioned were kind of a pet peeve with her, Robert, as far as hiring speakers. And I'll share it with the audience right now. And I'd like your feedback on that, and yours as well, Larisa. And I think that whether you're a professional speaker or not, these tips will help you. But I think that even beyond, it's more about salespersonship. It's about being a good person. But three things she said. One thing was, she said it finds it interesting when the speaker she's talking to is good on the phone and, or in person. The three of us here, right? We're relatively decent people, have a good smile, we're nice people. But she said when they get on stage, because I think you'll agree, Robert, this is performance, at least us who do this, on a certain level, it's performance. She said it's like dry, it's canned. It's like, wait a minute. The smile, the laugh, the engagement, doesn't have to be humorous. That's another topic, but the engagement they had, it was gone. And what she said, Robert, it was technically perfect. So it was technically good, but she said it was too good. They just weren't human. So that's one. And I'll go back to these points if you need me to. Number two, she said then, asking the event planner, who was the decision maker? She said that just lights her up. The event planner, definitely the big influence, is on the phone. And Ramon has the gall to say, Robert, Robert, thank you, Robert. Thank you, little boy, or some, that kind of dismissive word. But who's your boss? Who should I really talk to? And she said a number of speakers do that. And that's kind of an instant. They don't know it. she's the influencer, whether decision maker or not. She or who the implanter is has a big role to do in that. That's point 2. And then 3, she says the other pet peeve is people saying, speak to my agent. Larisa calls me, she's the event planner. Hey, Ramon, we're likely to hire you. Oh, Larisa, hold on one second. Speak to my agent, or I'll get back to you. So I'll pause there. One more thing I'll add, Robert, but I think that speak to the agent part, if you're Oprah, Barack, Trump, Tony Robbins, you're getting paid $10 million for a performance, please, I'll speak to your agent. But most normal people, I think if you can't take the time to talk to the event planner, there's a problem. But Robert, all that I just said, please talk to us.
Well, I mean, I think all of the things that you said, having canned speeches, asking if they're the decision maker, speaking to my agent, all of that comes back to one central point, and it really is about connection. Connecting with people. Do I see myself as more important than you, or do I see you as important, and do I want to get in your world and create a relationship with you, right? So if I'm on stage, if I'm on stage and I'm delivering a canned speech, yes, there's some level of, I want this to be perfect. Sure. I want this to be just right. And there also can be an element of, hey, I see you. I recognize that you are a human being. There are nuances and layers to who we are, and I want to learn a little bit more about you and who you are. So therefore, I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be vulnerable, be real, and show you who I am for the purpose of you being able to feel open enough to show me who you are as well. So we've got to connect with people, and maybe you can have a canned speech, but the canned speech is bad, particularly when you as a speaker don't take the time before you speak to connect with people.
Yes.
So if I'm in the audience, I'm at the door saying, hey, getting names, shaking hands, giving high fives or whatever, that creates that connection even before I get on the stage. And then I can have 15 minutes to repeat my script if I want. And that's not optimal. That's not how I would do it. But you still make the connection beforehand, and people give you a little bit of grace when you've made a connection.
Robert, you are so right about that. I make it a point, and I know any of us who speak at this level, I always am out in the audience before I speak. But I think the point about the canned speech, Robert, is yes, it can be canned. I'm sure, I don't know about Larisa, I'll hear from her in a minute, but I have, 3 or 4 key speeches I can use, I have there. But I think what she meant, especially when you're really paid some good money to speak, is that their speakers, Robert, you can tell it's simply rehearsed. There's not their natural laugh. If the baby cries, they don't take the time to make a joke about that, or it's like robotic, like the Terminator. So I think that's what she's making. And I've seen people do this a few times in my career. They were great speakers, but it was so perfect. I was like, this is memorized. If I went and clap loudly behind them, they would just keep going like it wasn't there. But so I think that's it.
I get that. I think the other thing though is audience feedback.
Yes.
Because I've seen spaces where I've seen somebody speak and it seemed robotic to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not good. That's horrible. And the audience loved it though. And the evaluations that they give and the survey feedback is oh yeah, this was super valuable to us. So I mean, at that point, does the meeting planner say, oh, I didn't particularly vibe with it, so I'm not going to give my audience that I'm responsible to this again? If the audience is asking for it, if the audience loved it, if they found it valuable, that's the ultimate feedback that you can give.
It's a good point. Larisa, what are your thoughts on this? Either as a practitioner, fellow speaker, I think that's the biggest word I've used, I think, this month, practitioner, or as one, if you can get to the mindset we're talking about, or answer both, but I'd love to hear your perspective on all this.
Yeah, so many thoughts are coming to me.
Sure.
So hitting on the last thing that Robert was just talking about, what comes up for me, it goes back to the authenticity piece, because I have definitely heard people speak that I don't enjoy how they're speaking, the presentation, or the roboticism. I don't even know how you.
I'll take it.
How robotic the speech is, but then you talk to them outside of it, and that's their personality.
Fair enough.
Right. So for me, it's that difference of, is somebody like how we're talking now and laid back and engaging, but then you go on stage and then you become the robot, or is that how you are, right? Is that how you authentically just show up? So that piece of it And also, I love that Robert was talking about the connection piece. And when Ramon, you were joking about, commenting on the baby piece of it, because I know I am not a paid speaker. I do more like training, education, facilitation type of stuff. However, I know when I was first starting to get on stages and going in front of people, I thought it did have to be like rehearsed, right? Every single word, and having everything planned out ahead of time, and how you're going to move your, all those things, instead of realizing that it's that energy of how you're showing up and being authentic when you're on the stage, and that it's okay to make mistakes, right? It's okay to misspeak sometimes or whatever, because that just shows you're a human and that people can still connect with you in that way. So I really appreciate that Robert brought in that piece around connection. And I know when I am in front of audiences, I love being able to connect with people ahead of time too. Like, I would never want to say like, oh, talk to my agent. Like, I want to talk to the people that I'm going to be presenting in front of or whatever, because that makes me more comfortable, honestly. But I'm not at that place where I'm getting $10 million and I just show up on stage and say,
right. Your
"In any
team
case, that doesn't matter."
Your team has cleaned the mic for you, and your team has put the folder in like the presidential.
Right.
I've been with the, when I used to work at the UN with the president quite a bit, and they have the young man, a young girl. They run up seconds before the president, open the folder, turn to the page, look, Secret Service double checks water and all this, and the president comes up. That's it. So
yeah, I think this also speaks to, Ramon, who you are getting your advice from, because I do know that and I've experienced gurus, coaches that say you want to put some distance between you. You want to make yourself seem a bit more important.
I've heard that
than because if they can access you, then you don't have that much value. If they can have immediate access to you, then you're only like a $2,500 speaker. If you want to appear like a $25,000 speaker, then you put some distance or some gates between you and the people that are hiring you. So then they tell you to ask the questions. Hey, are you the decision maker? Are you the person that hires speakers? Speak to my agent. Right? And that's the advice that some people who otherwise may be very nice people are just following advice of some guru. So the point here is decide who you want to follow, vet the advice, see what's working, get some mentors in the industry and some people that you can bounce or filter information through before you just accept the first guru that comes to your door.
You're right, Robert. And I think that it also shows that there's not one right way per se. I think you can't be a nasty, terrible, mean person. That, in my humble opinion, is the wrong way. But I think in general, thinking the three of us here, you're a nice person, generally speaking. There's not one right way. I have my style of engagement. It just happens to be a little, I shouldn't use the word unprofessional, but it's a little hokey and it's not polished. It's me, but, and to your point, Larisa, I wanted to touch on one thing about, are you a facilitator? Just those who are thinking about being a speaker and other things, these are different disciplines. And again, I've been speaking for over 20 years. And I find that workshop and training facilitation is a skill. Yeah. It's not something that I do. I'm not saying I couldn't learn it, but that's just not my gift. It's not what I've done. Workshop facilitation, training, it's a different discipline. I find also keynote motivational speaking, which is one thing I do a lot and love doing. That's a different type of skill. And then third is, and I know you know this, Robert, for sure, is hosting events. Different skill. People think, because I speak, especially a big event, 10,000 people that anybody can host. No, that's a skill or discipline. So I just wanted to touch on that there. Before we move on, Robert, or Larisa, anything you want to add on these 3 points? Or we're going to talk a little bit about our last point about autism. But anything you want to add, Robert or Larisa, to that?
No, I'm good.
Love it.
I'm good.
Hold on. I got to do this first. Since we're talking about being robotic, I just wanted to add a robot voice into the conversation.
Robert, thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
I love it. Rundown with Ramon. You will find everything on the Rundown with Ramon. We're glad you're here, and don't forget to contact Larisa, contact Robert. Not even just to work with them, just to let them know you're hearing their voice and you appreciate their message they're bringing to the Rundown with Ramon audience. Listen, Larisa, I'm going to turn to you for our last point on this. I had the opportunity, Larisa, to teach Sunday school class to a young man who was autistic. And feel free, Larisa, to help guide me through these words. I want to be sensitive, but I'm just being me. And I know I'm saying it all honorably, but autistic. And before I spoke, Larisa, I wasn't sure how it'd go. I just didn't know. And I had engaged with him a few times in the past. And I say this honorably, but I just want everybody to understand, when I talked to him, kind of averted his eyes and talked to him with his head down, things, as my friends are telling me, are common things with autistic people. But the point is, Larisa, that I'm making here, but you can take this wherever you want to go. I now understand, politics aside, I now understand why Elon Musk is the genius he is, or others like that. This young man wrapped rings around me, Larisa. I would say somebody, he'd be like, well, did you know these 3 points too? I'm like, oh, that's right, I forgot. So it was a beautiful discussion. And I just wanted to share that. I don't even know what I'm sharing, but I just wanted to share that I was so happy and honored because I'm nice and I had talked to him, but I was like, how will it be 45 minutes in my class? And it was beautiful. Different, sure. How his eyes and body language and few little things he did. Absolutely different than what maybe the average, but it was a beautiful experience. I'm excited. Larisa, any thoughts or feedback on what I just shared?
Yeah. Oh, so many thoughts are coming up for me. One, it's not the same thing, but I just want to go back to when we were talking about the speaking and you were saying, hey, it's a different set of skills, right? Speaking and hosting and being a trainer, and that each of us might have different things that we are uniquely gifted at. And so when we're thinking about like the autism spectrum or people with the neurodiversity, it's that oftentimes when we are not aware of all of the ways people can be different in that way, we might think that somebody who's averting their eyes is rude, right? How many times did you get told that as a child? Like, it's rude not to look at somebody when they're speaking to you, or even as an adult. And then we have this perspective like, oh, that person is rude, or that person is disrespecting me because they're moving around while I'm speaking to them. And so I think there are a lot of people who are maybe not as familiar with those types of things, or things that we might just not be aware of that other people have as just a part of their natural life, whether we know that they're on the spectrum or anything else, any differently abled people that we might encounter. It goes back to the being respectful of different humans and not assuming that we all have to be the same to be right, or that there's something wrong with someone because they don't do things the same way that we do them. And so I love that you had that experience. And I think it's important to bring awareness to this around like respect and understanding, hey, we might need to speak differently, or, write things down differently, or say things in different ways so that other people can understand or comprehend or retain information differently. Because a lot of people get set in like, this is the right way.
Yes.
And if you don't do it this way, you're wrong, or something is wrong with you.
Yeah, no, you're so true, Larissa. I'll give one other example. I was talking to a gentleman from Côte d'Ivoire. Did I say that okay, Robert? Is that past that's cool?
That works, I guess.
Okay, good, thank you. Larissa, what do you think? Côte d'Ivoire, does it sound cool enough?
I don't even know what that is, but let's go with it.
It's a country.
Ivory Coast.
Ivory Coast, yes.
Yeah.
Côte d'Ivoire. I'm saying it's so wrong. Larissa's like, oh, that's what he's saying. But anyways, and this is a side issue, but Robert, I want to get your point on the autism and what I just shared. But the point is, I was doing a video interviewing him, a quick little short video for a private video group I'm in. And I was talking fast and he was looking at me like this and he was nodding. And I thought he was disagreeing with me or something. And afterwards he said, Ramon, I didn't understand what you were saying. Or me, I'm while I'm doing the video thinking he didn't, he disagreed, but he was trying to catch up with my rapid English. So I just, to your point, context is everything, So Robert, jump on in here. What do you think about what I shared about me, having the honor, the privilege of being with this young man, and I'll be with him for another year,
Yeah. And, like Larissa, there's just so much that comes up for me in this. I mean, I think one of the things that comes up is us being intentional about emotional intelligence and awareness around that. I also think about the fact that labeling, there are so many different ways that we can go with this. That while labels are good in the sense that they helped us to provide some context or understanding of how people can behave, that's not the be all end all. It's not the only way, because what happens is a lot of times from the moment somebody says, Bill or Robert is autistic, people automatically say, okay, yep, they behave that way, they're going to do this. And that's not necessarily the truth.
Yeah.
I think it really comes back to, can we treat all human beings with respect? Can we treat people with grace? Can we understand that the behaviors that people exhibit don't always come from a place of maliciousness? They don't come from a place of, I want to criticize you. They may come from a place of, I've experienced some trauma, some hurt, some stuff, some misunderstandings in my life. Therefore, I exhibit this way because I'm trying to protect myself from pain.
Mhm.
And so I really want us to, I want to encourage us to, look past the labels and just really figure out how we can slow down a little bit and connect and understand each other as humans. Nope, I wasn't talking about you, Ramon.
I just heard a word that
yeah.
slowing down is good. Larisa has taught us that. But listen,
Yeah.
Robert, one more time, if you don't mind, just tell us how to reach you, Robert. This has been the rundown with, but let me pause. Larisa, did you want to add anything else? Let me make sure you didn't want to add anything.
I want to add one thing.
Please, yes.
I just love Robert and you, Ramon, but what Robin was talking about, being intentional and slowing down. And this is what came up for me. It's not about treating people how you want to be treated. It's about treating them how they need to be treated.
Wow.
So that means that we need to pay attention and we need to communicate and ask questions and get that feedback, instead of, like you, Ramon, using that example of like, well, that person just doesn't agree with me. You could have left that situation and just went the whole rest of your life thinking that, if you didn't have that conversation. And so it's being able to see, you don't need the same thing that I need.
Yeah,
we are all different, and we need to be able to respect the needs of others and acknowledge the needs of others. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, no, that was powerful. Thank you, Robert, indeed. And I think some days I wish it's not physiologically possible. Like there was video cameras all over. I mean, there are, of course, but in this kind of video cameras everywhere. And you could, oh, Larisa said, stop, Ramon. Let me rewind that, somehow. Oh, she had a bad, but life is not like that. So, but this was something, the reason with this gentleman, because I was videoing him. And afterwards I just watched the video. I was watching his face because I couldn't see his face. And he was like this. And so I was like, it forced me to say, I wonder what was going on there. But Robert Kennedy, listen, my friend, it's good to have you here again. Thanks for joining us as an expert panelist in the Rundown with Ramon. I really appreciate you, Robert. One more time, tell us how we can reach you.
Hey, you can get in touch with me. My name is Robert Kennedy III, RK3. So you can go to RK3, that's me, to connect with me. I was going to say RK3that'sme.com, but that's not correct. It's RK3that's.me. And you can connect with me there. All of my socials are there. You can email me. You can even call me from there. And there are a lot of different resources there to help you become a more fantastical communicator and storyteller. So RK3, that's.me.
Appreciate it, Robert. Larisa, one more time, tell us how we can reach you.
StrongByNatureWellness.com and Strong by Nature Wellness on all of the social platforms. And if you are a purpose-driven leader, executive, high performer, and you want to make a bigger impact without burning out, contact me.
Absolutely. And one more time, everybody, I'm so grateful to all of you. Thanks for being listeners of the Rundown with Ramon. It's been a brand new show, and we see more and more people listening to it. So definitely DM, connect with Larisa, connect with Robert, connect with myself. Share this episode. If this episode helped you, share it with somebody else who needs to laugh, cry, or just go, I learned something new today. Share this out with somebody else. Well, my name is Ramon Ray. You can get to know me better at RamonRay.com or zoneofgenius.com. And this is the Rundown with Ramon.